Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I got to sit down and talk with Maurice LaMarche. He's the voice of everything. No, seriously. He's the brain in Pinky and the Brain, Lur and Kif from Futurama, along with countless other voices. We talked about the upcoming Netflix series Disenchantment, what it was like moving from stand-up to voiceover, and a whole lot more. I hope you enjoy. Doing great.
Good.
Thank you so much for taking time out to do the interview. I met you at the Hulu panel, or rather, we had a chance to chat at ATX Fest in the Hulu
Yes,
lounge.
I remember.
And so, yeah, it's wonderful to get to talk to you again. You have Disenchantment coming out
August 17th.
Can you talk a bit about your voices in that, or your voice in that?
I don't know how much I'm still how much I'm allowed to say. I mean, some artwork has been leaked, that type of thing. I'll tell you. I can tell you my main character. My main character is the Prime Minister of the kingdom. It's set in the kingdom of Dreamland, and it's actually one of the poorer kingdoms in the world of the time. So we're kind of a ramshackle kingdom. Anyway, there's not a lot of governing to do. So even though I'm the Prime Minister, my prime job is kind of fetching a Princess Tia Beanie, or Beanie as she's called in the show, from local taverns. She likes to party. She's 19 years old, and she wants to party. She wants no part of this princess crap, and I'm the one who has to go fetch her. And I do that in a sort of hey, maybe they'll be mad at me, maybe they won't. It's on in a month. I do it in a sort of a Vincent Price mode, as it were, a very exasperated. It's like, imagine Kif Kroker from Futurama meets Vincent Price. So, he's constantly got to deal with this rebellious teenager.
So Lovitz, Capote, Price, all.
Yeah, somewhere in there, yeah. Well, Kif became his own thing. I now totally don't think of Lovitz or Capote when I do Kif. Kif is Kif.
I'll be honest. The first time I heard you do a Jon Lovitz impersonation just floored me. It's so eerily on, and I associate you on the critic. It never occurred to me that you maybe I was wrong. Do I need to double check? Were you the whole show? Was Jon Lovitz involved in the critic at all?
Oh God, yes, every line. Yeah. This is actually a bone of contention because somebody did one of the entertainment outlets of the time sort of intimated that I do the bulk of the work almost as a sound-alike, or that people inferred it because they did a story on me, and in the story I'm covering John's lines because he was off shooting City Slickers too. So I guess people just kind of drew the conclusion that and it's not true. John, there's one oomph that I covered for John that stayed in the show, and it was in the episode where he's kidnapped by the fan, and she's tied him to a bed, and he gets the idea to hoist his body off the bed and move it towards the door, and I covered a couple of those oomphs. Other than that, everything is Jon Lovitz. You're getting 100% Jon Lovitz when the critic is on. I did cover the burp in the crossover episode, though.
I think sometimes people maybe don't understand how that happens in voiceover. Some of your credits are things like, I think my favorite credit you have is wacko parentheses burps only.
Yes.
And the workflow of these things, can you talk a bit about how, is it just pure timing? So-and-so's off shooting City Slickers, we've got to cover this line.
Yeah, in voiceover, you're very lucky that it can be done anywhere at any time. They did record John in I think he shot it in Arizona or Utah. They would fly out later in the week and just get his lines. But for the table reading and for the record for the rest of the cast, I would record John's lines so that the animators get kind of a start on even just drawing to our reads. And then later we filled in John, of course. So that's kind of the way it works. They're under a tight schedule too, Not that film isn't, but they've got to get drawn. They got to get drawing right away because it's an 8-month turnaround on animation. So the sooner they get started, the sooner we have a product. It's not like it just goes into the cast. As Peter O'Toole says in my favorite year, it goes into the camera and then spills out into people's houses. We gotta draw one frame at a time. And by we, I mean people with a lot more patience than me, the fine animators and directors of the animated shows I've worked on.
When you moved from stand-up comedy to voiceover work, was it odd moving it such a far gap between the immediacy of you think up stand-up and you go on stage and try it out and it works or it doesn't, versus the volume of people and timeline of voiceover work in animation? Was it odd moving to such a cooperative?
It was a new skill for sure. I needed to for instance, learn to play well with others. Because a lot of the shows I was on were full cast recordings, which I now love. I love the idea that we play off of each other and give each other nuances that then build on other nuances. It's called acting, dear boy, as Laurence Olivier said to Dustin Hoffman when they were filming. What was the film? The
Marathon Man.
Marathon Man. I was going to say the Goodbye Man. The what? The Goodbye Man. Yeah, Marathon Man. Hoffman wanted to, kept running around the block to build up a sweat so he looked exhausted. And Olivier said, "Why don't you just try acting, dear boy? It'll spray you down." So anyway, it was definitely learning to act and not be an island unto myself. That's that was different from stand-up where if you get the laughs, it's all you, and if you don't get the laughs, it's all you, but you blame the audience anyway. So that was great. That was cool. And the only thing about it is the immediacy of the laugh itself is still hard for me to do without. When I'm doing a cartoon, I'm not sure if I'm funny. I can look and I can sort of see people behind the glass in the director's booth, and their shoulders seem to be shaking, but they're muted, they're potted down. So I don't know if they're laughing or whether they just have itchy shoulders. But you don't find out if you're funny for 8 or 9 months when it hits the air, and that part is hard for me because I just really drink in the sound of laughter. So, but other than that, it's a different skill set, but one I'm darn glad I've acquired.
Now, starting out, you did impressions, and in your stand-up act. When you were a kid in high school, did you do celeb impressions for your friends, or did you do impressions of your friends?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember what your first one you really thought you nailed?
Yeah, Peter Falk. Younger generations remember him as the grandfather in The Princess Bride. When Wesley said, "As you wish," he was really telling her, "I love you." But I fell in love with Peter Falk on a show called Columbo from the 1970s, where he played. Did you ever see Columbo?
Yes, yeah.
A fantastic show. I mean, we don't have anything like it now. He was a rumpled, just dumpy looking police lieutenant who you never ever suspected had the brain of a genius, pulsating inside that little furrowed brow. And nobody ever got away with the crime because Columbo was super smart but never acted like he was. And Falk played the two sides of him beautifully. So I saw that show and then went to school the next morning after seeing the show for the first time. And this teacher of mine, Mr. Fraser, Rob Fraser, I still actually follow him on Twitter. He was doing this very bad Columbo impression in the schoolyard, and I went up and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Fraser, sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's been a murder. You're killing a Columbo impression." And that was it. The girls that were gathered around, who were my classmates at the time, they just laughed, and I was like, "Oh my God, I found something that I do that's good." I was actually good at something. So I walked around doing Columbo for 5 years. No, I mean I built the repertoire in high school. Yeah, it's how I kept myself from getting beaten up. You know, the hoodlums couldn't beat you up if they were busy laughing. You know, so they kept me around for entertainment. I hung out in the pool halls, didn't play pool, didn't do drugs, but just hey, do that Columbo impression, do that Uncle Arthur impression. All right, only if you promise to beat me up really hard. You know.
And so, moving to New York and then moving to LA to further your career, do you remember what you held on to as the push, or do you remember when you felt like this was a thing you could do to take that step?
Unless it was a moment of insanity or clarity, I can't remember which. But what tells a 19-year-old to go to New York and try out at the Improv? I don't know. It was Labor Day weekend of 1977, and I'll back up. Actually, you know what? I had a friend who encouraged me to do it. I actually, before I went to New York, I went to Philadelphia to audition for the Mike Douglas show, and that was hard one. This girl who I worked with at the bakery at the mall, my first job was cleaning the bakery. She was a real firecracker, and she said, "I'm going to get you an audition for the Mike Douglas show." She pestered them and pestered them and pestered them. This little girl in an orange uniform from a bakery just kept hounding them until they finally said, "Fine, if you get down here the weekend of August 19th, the show's out of town, Mike's in Los Angeles, there's a skeleton crew. I'll take a look at your friend in the office if you come in on a Friday afternoon." And I did. I went in and I did my little 4-minute act. We flew down to Philadelphia, and she and her friend, who would later become my first wife, Linda, and we went down to Philadelphia. I read, and he was actually very nice. He said, "You've got some good voices there, and you've got even a little stage presence, but you need to start working out." I said, "What do you mean working out? You need to build up my muscles?" "No, we have comedy clubs. Don't you have comedy clubs in Canada?" No, we don't." "Well, go to a place called Grandma Minnie's here in Philadelphia and go up and do your 5 minutes, and then move to New York and play the Improv." And I was like, wow, okay, all right, if this is what I need to do. So I just heard those instructions from a guy who worked for the friggin' Mike Douglas show, which was like, it was like Johnny, Merv, Mike Douglas. It was like the third most popular talk show in the world. And so I did that. I went there that night, did my stand-up, did okay, went to the Improv Labor Day weekend, and it went okay, but I knew I had to come back, except, I picked LA, and it was a couple of years later, but I knew that this was what I needed to do. And so a couple of years later, Linda and I packed up and moved to Los Angeles, and we'd saved some money and got our little Valley Garden apartment and started playing the Comedy Store. Long answer to your question. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Harder answers are the really, really short ones. So. Have you ever gotten a particularly frustrating bit of helpful advice, quote unquote?
The most frustrating helpful advice I ever got was from Jim McCauley, who was the talent coordinator for The Tonight Show under Johnny Carson at the height of the show, when a stand-up comics appearance on The Tonight Show meant you're getting a sitcom next week. He was the guy who put on Shandling. He was the guy who put on Seinfeld. And it was right around that time when I was watching those guys who I knew both of them. I was actually good friends with Shandling at the time. And, and he came out to see me, and I killed. I had a killer set. And I went, and I expected him to greet me with a big smile and go, "You're doing the show next Tuesday night." And he said, "Okay, here's the problem. We can get Peter Falk, so we don't need to see your Peter Falk as a waiter bit. Johnny already hosts the show, and he really doesn't like when people do him, even though he pretends to like it when Rich Little does it. He actually doesn't." "Oh, okay. Yeah, we can get all the people you're doing on our show. What I think you need to do is do a complete 180 and develop a character for yourself. Maybe dress up in a lumberjack outfit, and you're Maurice LaMarche from Quebec, and you're a fish out of water, and you don't know how to get girls in Los Angeles, and that's your character on stage. You're this French Canadian guy who just isn't fitting in. That's what you need to do as a stand-up comedy act. And I was like, okay, thanks, except that I have this brilliant little thing that I do where I can imitate absolutely any voice I hear, but it's like you're asking me to be Clark Kent instead of Superman, But I thanked him politely for his advice and kept doing what I was doing. And you know what? Here's the thing. All these years later, he may have been right. That may have been the key to me having a more successful stand-up career. It may have been what might have gotten me on the Tonight Show. And he came to see me a few more times, and I think he was pissed that I didn't take his advice. I never got on the Tonight Show. Even though it was my dream, I just wanted the thumb and forefinger circle, the nice one from Johnny, and I never got it. But that may be the most frustrating piece of advice, and part of the frustration is thinking, was he right? Was Jim McCauley right? This guy who had shepherded all these comedians to stardom on the Tonight Show? Maybe he had something. But It didn't turn out so bad this way.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I'm happier to have you as the voice of 1,000 different characters that I remember across my life than
Thank you.
Than a really great stand-up set somewhere.
Yeah, it's been a nice run.
You did okay.
Sure. And the thing of it is, I'm now at the age when, young guys like yourself who used to have some stubble. You're not, teenagers. You're like, grown men come up to me and say, "You were the voice of my childhood." And to me, that just it warms up something inside me to hear that. I at least once a Comic-Con, and I do probably about a dozen Comic-Cons a year. Somebody tells me that some work that I did, whether it was Pinky and the Brain or Ghostbusters or Animaniacs or Tiny Toons or Tasmania, something I did made them laugh at a dark time in their lives, And because life is rough when you're a kid and a teenager, and from bullying to a parent being ill or dying, people have told Rob Paulson and me that Pinky and the Brain was their oasis. It was the chance for them to escape, and it was safe for them to laugh for half an hour. So that's well worthwhile. Just that.
Well, it's definitely been true for me. Yeah, I can't thank you enough. I can't wait for Disenchantment. It looks great.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's different from Futurama. Just not only in the time period, but I think in the approach. It kind of starts where Futurama ended off. It's starting with heart. It's starting with characters you're really going to care about from the get-go. And, our 3 stars, Nat Faxon, Eric Andre, and Abby Jacobson are fantastic as the main trio. And then John DiMaggio is her father. Oh, my God, are you going to love the King Zog. He's amazing. I play about a dozen characters in the first season, just weaving in and out, different medieval types. But, it's Billy West is there, Dave Herman. It's almost a full Futurama reunion on the show. Tress MacNeille, so.
Maybe I've got it figured out this time, and that Groening guy can finally get a hit under his belt.
Yes. Well, I think he's finally kind of getting the hang of this thing. Yeah. God bless him.
Well, I can't thank you enough.
You bet, Les.
Wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Electric Sweater Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener-supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and electricsweater.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.